Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Director of Artist and Studio Programs at Baltimore Clayworks, and we are thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I am joining from my office located in Piscataway and Susquehannock Land, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual studio tour given today by Lars Westby. Lars Westby was born in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. He earned a BA in art history and a BFA in ceramics from Penn State University and an MFA in ceramics from the University of Colorado, Boulder. He has taught at numerous colleges in Maryland and currently teaches at Anne Arundel Community College. Mr. Westby has exhibited extensively, nationally and internationally, and has received numerous national awards. He has received 3 Maryland State Individual Artist Awards in 2005, 2007, and 2012, and was a Baker Artist Award finalist in 2023, 2022, and 2019. He was a former resident artist at Baltimore Clayworks and was a guest artist at Tainan National University of the Arts in Taiwan in 2007. He lives in the Annapolis Eastern Shore area where he works as a studio artist in ceramics and paintings. For more information about our artist talks, please visit our virtual library at baltimoreclayworks.org and tune in for our next studio tour, or I should say artist talk, on Tuesday, September 23rd with Yushan Chang, short-term resident artist from Taiwan from 1:30 to 2. I will now turn it over to Lars.
Special thanks to Rebecca and Kayla, Baltimore Clayworks, for putting all this together. And I'm basically going to be just talking about my work as an artist, kind of in chronological order, very beginning to work I'm making right now. So this kind of has to do with, the virtual or the workshop I'll be doing. The presentation is going to be kind of geared towards that a little bit. I have the workshop on the 20th and 21st of September. So it's all about using molds to make either functional ware or sculptures. Okay, so I have a bunch of images here. I think Rebecca kind of went over, everything, where I was born, where I went to school. I went to go to Penn State, great program. I just kind of ended up in a program I didn't know anything about, I guess, but it's a great program. I guess it was there, I knew nothing about, who taught there or whatever, but it's just a really great place. Dave Tigney was the head professor at Penn State, and he's one of the people who helped founded NCECA. It was pretty neat. So I kind of lucked out going there. I had a really good time. Then I went to the University of Colorado. And then from there, ended up back in Maryland. But talk about some of my work here, the early work. So all this early work is from Penn State. I kind of did all sorts of different things in the beginning. It's throwing, it's casting, using different types of molds, hand building. But this work was probably some of the earlier work that really started to make work that was kind of about me as an artist. Particularly that one piece you see on the left, I think that was my first mold piece I made from a one-piece mold, very first one. Then I started using molds after that, really got into it. And the piece on the right is using mostly slabs, and then they're both raccoons. So I was doing a lot of raccooing early on, and a lot of salt firing early on. So the next couple images, I think I have a bunch of these. Yeah, this is pretty typical what I was doing, creating these pieces that kind of had this industrial feel to them, sort of industrial, organic, something that seemed to imply sort of function. And this is something that you'll see throughout my work, all the way up to the work I'm making now. So it's kind of interesting that what I was making way back then, something that's still sort of in my work that I create. But these are some typical examples. These are a couple more using slab work. I'm doing a lot of raccooing. Like the one on the right, I used the mold for that shape. Slowly getting into the, making the molds, or these kind of simple one-piece molds, and pressing clay into it. So basically doing press molds. And then also the one on the right is start to see a bit of a nautical theme in the work, and that's something that starts to carry through in quite a bit of the work. You'll see that later on. Yeah, I've done a lot of boating. I spent a lot of time in the water, and it kind of carries through just from personal experience. I ended up in Annapolis. That's not too surprising. These are a couple other works. Once again, they're kind of these sort of industrial pieces. Bit of a nautical theme, maybe bobbers, buoys, stuff like that. Starting to play around with marks on them. Basically, just cutting into it lightly and then pressing it out, create like these patterns. In this case, a very physical pattern. And that's something you see throughout the work, starting to use patterns on the pieces, almost like a utilitarian type pattern in some cases, like markings. But you see, these are some of the earlier pieces where you see that. These are raccoon. So I was really doing a lot at that point. Then let's see the next ones here. Right. So pretty much implied objects. And seeing these are actually salt fired. So the raccoon doing a lot of salt firing using white clay, porcelain, also black clay. I think the piece on the left is slip cast, and, the main part of it, and then the little tubes were quite extruded, this black clay. So it's kind of like this industrial piece, kind of broken apart. One on the right, very kind of similar, industrial, bit nautical maybe, like something that might be pulled out of the water, whatnot. I think a lot of this comes from growing up in Pennsylvania. It had sort of this industrial feel to it, but also being surrounded by nature, a weird dichotomy. Maybe this is what's coming through in the work. The one on the right was also made using molds and attached together. And I think it's mostly this salt-fired finish on it. Let's see, a couple. Okay, so the work that you just saw, that is all from when I was at Penn State. And a lot of that work would have been the work I used for my portfolio by the grad school. So I went to Penn State. I went a couple years doing ceramics, but I actually stayed after I graduated for an extra year and a half. Did like independent study. It's not that uncommon for people to stay on and do extra work programs. And that's where I made actually a lot of that work. So I knew I needed to build up my portfolio. But I ended up getting into University of Colorado, great program. Then I really actually switched things around quite a bit. Started using a lot more molds, and actually changed from doing a lot of salt firing, raku firing, and really started to focus on like a low fire 04 firing. So I started to make these larger pieces. And I thought it'd be better to change up how I was doing it with the low fire, as far as like structural pieces go, really big pieces, be really hard to do in a raku firing. Also, I was really starting to think about surface finishes. So that's where I started to do a lot of testing with glazes, a really big part of my work. And then I also changed over to using red clay. So I kind of changed everything from when I was at Penn State to grad school. But you can kind of see the themes here sort of continue from what they sort of were before, very industrial, very nautical in this case, a little bit more so than in earlier pieces. I mean, some of these look like big bobbers or buoys, pieces hanging up, colors on it, very colorful, kind of nautical in a way. And also working in multiples. You can see in these pieces, good example. So since I'm using molds are kind of about, some ways, production, but also you can make one-offs. You can do either one. I really got into the multiples, once again, playing around with the idea of sort of kind of this industrial theme, but also sort of with the idea of, you have production potters making multiples, right? An idea of like the craftsman. It's this weird dichotomy of the craftsman multiples, but also this industrial aspect to it, using molds. and kind of making these large pieces, lots of them, piles of them, kind of piled up. Let's see, a couple more images of these. Yeah, so it had the hoop series, which I love that series, big hoops, cogs, something you see in later work. I've done a whole bunch of series of these types of pieces. At this point, everything's made in a mold. I make the original out of clay, usually solid clay, make a mold out of it of plaster, and I press it, start putting them together. So the hoops would have been 4 pieces fired separately, then attached afterwards. But very colorful. And then the piece on the left is a little different. That one sort of references double spouted vessels, sort of pre-Columbian work in some ways. I was in the Southwest going to grad school, so I was looking at pre-Columbian pieces, which I really like a lot. So that one's a little more of a literal look at that. Those pieces hanging. So that's what that one's about. The next one here is a few more. A couple of these are a little more literal. The acorns on the right, again, multiples, kind of referencing a vessel almost. You have these little balls that come out. It's about containment, it's holding something gestural. And the one on the left is very similar to like boat fenders. Have you ever seen boat fenders? These rubbery, weird shapes. Keeps a boat off a dock. These are basically based on that. Big round shapes, real kind of thick, glossy white glaze with a bunch of patterns on some of them. And then once again, a whole pile. Things are on the floor, things are hanging up, things are leaning against the wall. It's almost like an installation. I guess in this case, very much like an installation where you walk through it. It's almost like you're walking through this weird field of industrial stuff, or maybe some boatyard or somewhere. I think I was influenced by some of the installations that were going on in the sculpture department at the time. But that's what these are kind of about. Let's see, next couple, a little close up there of the, not sure what you'd call them, big bobber looking shapes. They're actually really big, like 36, 40 inches long. And then the other ones on the right, a little more abstract with these little slug shapes. These ones I started to really think about surfaces. So I was using a lot of glossy white and then also natural clay, exposing the natural clay. So half of it's unglazed, half of it's glazed. Ones on the right are using sort of this waxy finish on the pieces. I think really works with the sculptural ideals of them. Kind of has a patina to it, almost like a weather duck. I think it really works with sort of that aged kind of industrial feel. And this is when I really started to do a lot of testing, at night, testing glazes, finding recipes, changing them, testing them. Probably done, I don't know, a couple thousand maybe altogether. Although I've distilled it down to just a couple at this point. Okay, next couple. Start with Baltimore Clearworks residency. So as a grad school, and then after grad school, I actually did a couple different things. I didn't start right off going to Baltimore Clearworks. Actually, built houses, timber frame houses for a year or two, and renovated old houses, and also worked on boats. Did that for a couple of years. Actually worked out really well, almost too well. So I was kind of out of clay for a little bit. So I decided to quit all that, and then ended up applying to Baltimore Clayworks. Got in as a resident there for quite a few years, almost 10 years, I think. It was a really great experience. And these pieces, sort of the start that time period. I got the sort of like rubbery looking fender pieces on the left. These are all new ones, but similar to the ones I made before. And the ones on the right here, a little more literal in a way. They're kind of like these buoy bobber shapes. I'm starting to use a little more patterns in the pieces. There's sort of these stripes, one's on the right, one on the left, these little sort of dot patterns, wax resist, big little dots, glazing it. That's something I was really thinking about. This is sort of these sort of industrial, sort of semi-functional patterns, that I would call it. Sort of could be decorative in a way, but more about How it could be like a functional decoration. How I'd look at it. Okay, couple influences. So piece on the right are pieces that are for a larger piece. You see, I'm starting to glaze parts of them, bottom part. Can't remember if I glazed the top. I don't think I did. I can't remember. They'd all attach together, creating like a real long piece. The thing on the left is just kind of a influence piece. So I was looking at these industrial things, but also looking at these images of these sort of functional pots all piled up together. That I thought was very sculptural. Kind of reminded me of these industrial pieces all piled up. They're all handmade. We have a big cog here, so I was making some cog pieces. Sort of that industrial working theme. Picture on the right, it's a pretty famous photograph. This guy working on this big industrial machine. And at this point, I started to think about what I was making. These objects, they all have a sort of implied function. Most cases, they're sort of like working objects, kind of like that guy who's working with a wrench. So in a way, it's really about objects for use that you use with your hands, functional objects. So like the piece on the right here, sort of like the sunburst thing, got little hands on it, little cogs kind of radiating out. It's like it's something you'd see in some, I don't know, factory or something, spinning something, who knows? It's kind of my take on it. You see the little pieces on it. I think those are similar to the ones that showed before that are being glazed, the multiples. This is where you see how they're all attached. And I got the matte big cog on the left. So it's pretty literal, big massive piece. I think it's close to 8 feet tall and made in a mold, 12 pieces, folded together, lifted in place. And I was really using some new different surface treatments on these. I think both these pieces have similar glazes on them, very crusty glazes, a little hard to see unless you do detail. I don't know if a detail shot, but they have a real nice texture and patina to it. And then I had a lot of different colors with this one glaze. Both these pieces are actually just one glaze with different colorants in the glaze. So do one glaze, maybe 20 different colors, and I use that in some of my sculptures. I kind of distilled it down to something that's a lot simpler. And also, I guess I was really thinking about, the handmade part. So there are a couple more source inspirations, kind of these working tools, hand tools, using your hands, creating like a handmade object or industrial object, using objects, using your hands. It's kind of the thinking. So I started to call my recent work sort of like the working objects that are used to work, that we're using to create, whether it's a simple little tool or something a little more complex. A couple more images here, a little more source of inspiration. Yeah, big anchor, a little more literal. You'll see that in later work. Big pile. I don't know what those things are. I think they might be like big buoy things, industrial ones for shipping lanes or something, piled up. It's like that look, kind of similar to my early work. And here's some more work from later on, Farmer Clay Works. I got the anchor piece on the right, so kind of literal, right? Big anchor kind of thing, hanging down, very playful in a way. Also, and I got the pile of little weird little buoy things. They have handles, you can pick them up, right? Almost like a tool, even like a functional object. Start to see like there's a lot of handles on pieces, even like literally like hands, patterns on the pieces, using kind of weird textural glazes throughout. The next couple or more objects where I started to play with the forms, shapes. In some cases they're kind of literal, in some cases they're a little more abstract. I'm really using sort of the pattern on these. It's a big part of it. It shows the piece off, sort of decorative in a way, but also utilitarian. One on the left has like a little handle thing on top. It's almost something you could lift up. Almost has a figurative feel too. So it's something that sort of brought into the work was a sort of a figurative aspect. I guess since I'm talking about the hand a lot, also thinking about the body, but that's just an interesting aspect, or just sort of the curvilinear shapes go, whatnot. And these are all, of course, made in molds, big molds. I make press mold everything. And these are the same glazes past, I think, the earlier couple of the earlier pieces. So it's just, this would be all just one glaze. Same with these two. Same idea. I think the one on the right is a little different. The moon glaze, really just working different shapes and forms. The one on the left actually is all hand built, whole piece, except for the little donut shape on the end. So sometimes I'll just hand build a whole piece just to do it. But once again, it's sort of like weird, quiet thing, kind of surreal, in I guess, in a way, maybe a little bit of a surrealistic feel, definitely a playful feel of the pieces. That's always been in the work throughout, I guess. Not sure how to explain that exactly, but um, definitely in there for a large part of it. Let's see, next pieces I have more combination molds and hand built. The one on the right has these little lugs on it, right? Must be used for something. Got a sort of crusty surface on it. Some of it that's unglazed, like the little knobby things in front. The theme I was working on for a while. And the other one on the left, incorporating little hand pieces, so the hand in art, hand in creating, uh, and making objects, working objects. What it's kind of about. Next one's sort of a similar theme. Let's see. Yeah, if we go to the next couple here, there we go. Yeah, so some idea with these little different surfaces. Starting to layer a couple different glazes. I put like a shiny one on, then that overlapped with kind of like a crawl glaze, particularly the one on the right. Um, has a real interesting texture. In this case, it has a lot of different glazes on it, different types. This one kind of looks like I think it's just based on those little kitchen things that you hammer stuff with, the patterns on them, pound stuff. That's what it's based on. And then the one on the left, got the hand theme on it, the craftsman hand. Also very much like a vertebrae, from this, the sort of anatomical human aspect crept into some of the work. Also the one on the right, the big head in a way, it's kind of there, that aspect, the human form kind of creeping into these sort of surreal, industrial, organic shapes. A couple more of these pieces. Big one on the right, one on the left. It's kind of like using the multiples in a way. Only in this case, they have a pile of multiples. I'm actually connecting them. Something I've done with recent work. I started taking all these parts and putting them together as one big piece. But you have like a little handle up there, a little hand, the maker's hand, or that one hangs on the wall. One just sits on a pedestal. Same idea, kind of shapes. Uh, Couple here. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. A couple more. Similar theme. We kind of see, these themes throughout. I'm really playing different shapes and forms, but you can definitely tell it's my work, sort of a signature style. I'm really just making all different molds, reusing molds in a lot of cases, for different pieces. I try to reuse them quite a bit. One on the right or one on the left has little hands. Kind of went crazy with them, a whole bunch of them. So it's kind of a neat piece. Okay, next images. Artist. Okay, so yeah, as a guest artist at Tainan University of the Arts, a great experience, kind of an exchange program. Bulmer Clayworks and Tainan University of the Arts in Taiwan. So this is the work I made there. So this piece, kind of a similar theme. Actually had to redo all my glazes. It's all new ones there. Everything's a little different. It worked out really well. Make all new molds, great shapes. Um, that's what these pieces are about. Little stripes in there. Got a few other pieces I made there. The next ones, a couple more. That's sort of the one on the left or the one on the right. very figurative. It's very much their little hands, kind of industrial, little head part, these parts kind of put together. I think it's pretty sure it's just one whole piece, except for maybe the very bottom. Can't remember. Sure. Maybe the head and bottom were separate pieces, maybe firing them separately. And one on the left is a little different. It's just really gnarly glaze on it, but that's still that sort of nautical theme, like these things that washed up in a basket. These little buoy shapes. Really worked great, that one. Something a little different. A couple more on the left, more literal, kind of fun, a little figurative shape, almost abstracted. Again, playing with surface treatments, you can kind of see it a little better in that one. One on the right, sort of still playing with the theme, right? Industrial sort of objects, wide use, utilitarian surface treatment, the patterns, little hands on them. And I think the interesting thing about the one on the right is I made a mold for that piece and pressed two of them, put them together, and that's why I made sort of this pillowy shape for the sculpture. I think that was the start of when I started making platters. I made a platter from that mold. I really thought it was great, and I think I might have some pictures of that one coming up. So we'll see what we have here. Next images. Yeah, there we go. So I started making more sort of quasi-functional work. You can see the shape here, very similar to the one we just saw. Would have been made from the same mold. So I kind of randomly, made a platter from it because I thought it would look good, and then I really went off on a tangent and started making a whole big platter series of different shapes. I can see the surface treatment there, using these glazes that really melt into each other, real great surface. There's an installation of like 9 of them, sort of playing with multiples. A couple of other shapes. I got the 5 sort of petal one. So I'm just kind of going off on what I did with that first one, making molds just for the platters in this case. And both of these would have been new molds for the platters, but I would have pressed each of these molds and made a sculpture from each one since I have the mold. But these were definitely made, for the platters specifically when I first made them. But yeah, really playing with surface treatments. Really love the one on the right. Turned out great. And a couple other pieces here. So I've got this whole series going, right? The whole industrial, nautical, hands-on theme. But I'm also making other work while I'm doing all this. And left's a good example of that. I started doing a little more raccooning, and then some slip casting. Although I think the body of this piece is pressed, and little pieces, I'm sure if they're slip cast or pressed, but I did a whole series based on little life preservers, kind of on the side. And then the piece on the right made a teapot. So like those model kits we used to get as a kid, you snap them off, put them together. So this is my take on a teapot, about as close as I'll get probably. Very sculptural, but that's the idea. You take the pieces off, put them together, teacup. So I'm always making these little different things, often like series, kind of working in series. I think the next couple will show some of this stuff. Now these are other ones, yeah, more recent works. So with the same theme. You can see the one on the right, that's probably from the platter mold we saw earlier. So I made a sculpture from it. This would be the sculpture, a little hand mold, sort of abstract hand mold, but that would have been from the mold I used in other pieces, put them on, glazed it out. The other one's on the left is kind of this weird, has a little prong on the end of it. Kind of looks like these weird little fish floats you see in the water, things sticking up. I think that was the influence. I made a series of those. They'll go in the wall. They're fragile. They have these little aspects to them. So we'll talk about that idea of the working object. So let's see, a couple more here. Other ones. Yeah, this one. The big hands. In this case, made a couple new molds. The hand. Put them on these pieces. I made a whole installation of the one on the right. Whole series. All a little different in some ways, but also a little big hand on it, sort of abstracted hand, my version of it. So still playing with theme. This one's a little more, I don't know, literal, I guess, the big hands, but also about like multiples, you know, applied objects, uh, human figure coming into it, you know, the hand. Okay. Oh, okay, the process. The process how I made this cog is pretty similar to how I make most of my work, making the original out of clay. And I think the next couple of series will show that. So I start off the template, pretty typical, with a lot of work on a board, kind of lay it out, did it on paper, and I start building on top of that piece of paper. You can see how sometimes build can be a little different, but would have cut out pieces, the basic shape slabs, put them together, so I basic form, then I fill it in. And for the little ball shape, that would have been a separate mold. I would have pressed and attached it uh, to the form I'm building. And I think the next one show form. Yeah, another good example of it. Different angle. So I completely fill it in. I do a couple coats. You have either white slip or red slip. Like I probably did red slip. But this piece is basically almost ready to have a mold made from it. So I just built a wall around it. In this case, it's probably a pretty tall wall because I had to cover the whole piece. But then a lot of molds I make, I just wait for the plaster to set up, and then I kind of smear it over the piece. So a lot of molds are real thin, maybe half-inch thick, 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm pressing clay into it. I think this one is just thicker, harder to build a wall around it. But I would have cast this one. I think I see that in the next images. Now I'm getting it ready. You can kind of see I got it coated. I guess I would have coated the whole piece. I do that because this, I'm going to be pressing them in red clay. So I want residual to have red clay in it. Also, you can see imperfections. But there's the piece in the mold. So in the bottom half, so it would have been a two-piece mold that pulled off the top half. There's the piece inside. So it would have had two halves, you know, half filled with clay, like a slab of clay in each half, and I would have scored the ends, squished them together. Then you see on the right, finished piece. So that would be, once it's cleaned up a little bit, ready for bisking. And then the next couple ones show it a series, a couple of them together. And then when I finally had all 12 made, I think I made 13, one extra. I think at this point they're bisked. And I put them all together, get the layout. And on here, started to glaze them. They first started to get the glaze, the patterns. You can see a bunch of them lined up. And I like the way they line up like that. Kind of goes back to that theme of the multiples and whatnot. I glaze them all at the same time. Use a pencil to do layout. And then glaze them up and then fire them all on a computer kiln. Keep it pretty accurate. Had to do 3 different firing pieces. And there's the finished piece. Big cog. You can kind of see the seam a little bit in the one on the right. There would be holes on the back of each one where they get bolted together. A real big piece. So it's funny, I actually started making these bigger pieces, but I was making them in parts. So the pieces weren't quite as big per se. But once you put it all together, you get a real big piece. I think these, in the next few pieces that you see, these ones. So I think these, I made these, can't remember. I don't know if it was in naps at this point, but I didn't have a really big kiln to start off with. So I actually started making lots of smaller pieces and putting them together to make bigger pieces. So I actually started making bigger work, I had like a smaller setup just by putting them together. And that's this idea where you do the multiples. And this is a real big, tall piece. This wind up thing, these little things in the bottom that turn, like I think it's called the tiller piece, right? Tiller, tilt, whatever, tilt stuff. We'll playful as well, though, a combination of both. But really, really working with lots of these parts, putting it together. It's a really nice way to work. I can work real big, but with smaller pieces. And then there's chances of things, if one piece breaks, doesn't matter. So I just make an extra pretty easy. It's just a small piece. But yeah, this one really turned out great. I really like this one. So the next one, We have here some more recent work. All the same theme, really, utilizing molds, pressing stuff, very industrial, playful, shapes, a wall piece on the left, uh, using like this little piece of metal between the two pieces. So it looks like a little fragile, but it's not. The other one looks like kind of like a stamp piece. One on the right, stamping something. You can see in some other new pieces. Kind of what I'm working on right now, using patterns, sort of these decorative relief patterns to make pieces look like they're made to press something. Uh, the next couple, so that piece is the next one's after this, but this one's a couple other pieces. Sculpture on the left. That also would have been a platter mold initially, I think. I made the sculpture from it. And the one on the right, using these like little sort of fidget pieces stacked up. That's again this idea, at a smaller kiln, it's making smaller pieces, but then putting them together, create sort of big pieces, hang, whatnot. The next couple show that, so the sculpture on the right, for these pillowy shapes, that would have been from the platter mold. Then I got the stamps on the left. So I got these relief stamps, all these different patterns. These are pieces that you can hold in your hand. So it's really about the idea of holding them, using them, all different patterns. And I collected basically plastic for a couple of years, plastic from packaging, all from all different stuff, and started making molds of all those pieces and sort of casting them and making a whole series of these. I made about 200 of these pieces. The whole idea is to show them all at once, big installation. I think it's for a show, but the show didn't happen for whatever reason. But this is pretty much what I'm working on now, are pieces that kind of have these unglazed sort of patterns. So about making marks and printing and using it to make something. Only the new ones I'm making are going to be bigger. So I have a couple new molds. I haven't pressed yet, but we'll do soon. And I think there's a couple more images. I'm not sure how many more I have here. Oh yeah, there we go. Got the big one on the left. A little closer look at it. It's a great piece. Tough one to make. Look how it just radiates out. Like there's little sun sculptures you see in people's houses that radiate out. Probably would influence me. Or, and then the other ones, like this sort of, I can't remember what this one was called. It has little hands on it, but this one, very industrial, the hands, and actually those pieces that you see holding this one up, the little pieces with the whole stem, that was from the earlier image. The pieces that were half glazed, multiples. You see them all glazed up, fired. This piece, figurative parts in there. Let me see, more after this. Couple, yeah, it's a good shot of seeing the pieces in place. Gives you an idea of sort of scale. These on the walls, pedestals. Some of what I've done before, very playful in a way. I think someone once remarked that they thought my work looked like they were walking through a playroom or something. So they walked through one of my shows once. It's like, yeah, okay, I can see that. Then let's see, is there more after this? That's it. So that's basically what I do, my work, and that's pretty recently. And then right now I'm working on the sort of those stamp textured pieces, making these molds look like something that makes an imprint. Those are going to be the newest pieces. So I haven't pressed them yet. I'm actually going to bring a couple of them into the workshop and press them there just to demonstrate them. I haven't pressed them yet myself, so it'd be nice just to do it and for the people who come to the workshop. But that's what I'm about.
Thank you, Lars. That was really fantastic. It was great to hear you talk about your work and give us the history. For those, before I forget to mention that may be interested in signing up for Lars' workshop, he did mention it's September 20th and 21st here at Baltimore Clayworks. So we do have a few spots left. So please sign up if you are still interested in taking the workshop.